Okay, so here we're going to talk about podcast episode templates. So we've created our podcast artwork, but we also want to have new artwork for every individual episode, especially if we're doing something like interviewing a person. Well, especially for that kind of episode, we probably want to have a different picture of the person in every piece of artwork. So we want to find a piece of artwork that matches our brand and that we can change out easily without a lot of work, without having to start from scratch every time, to create kind of engaging, reasonably different looking so that they stand out as being separate in templates, so that's just easier for us. So let's look at some of these. All I've done is pulled up Canva, which again is free or paid, depending on which you want to which you want to use. I don't know why I said hunt. I have, in this case, premium, so I'm going to be able to use some of these pro templates, but let's see what we can find. First, let's maybe remind ourselves what the artwork for this particular podcast looks like, which is our Pretend Fantasy podcast. We can edit our podcast and we can kind of look at our artwork here. Okay, so we've got some monsters. We've got our Pretend Fantasy podcast, monster podcast thing. So, okay, cool. What can we do to make an episode template that looks like that? So I'm going to go to Canva. I'm going to find something that's kind of starts with a structure that I don't mind. I think I don't mind this one. This one's pretty good. And actually, this one is free. So let's click on this one because if you're a free user, you'll be able to use it as well. Now, I want to make sure I do some things. I want to kind of match the look of my artwork, right? So I'm going to go up here, and I'm actually going to reload Canva, and I'm going to open up my Pretend Fantasy Podcast project in this separate tab so that I can get the same colors and some of the same items from this artwork. So I know that I have a white background here, so let's jump into... let's jump into this one and let's change this background to white so that it matches with what else I'm doing. So I'll select on the color selector and I'll go to FFFFF, and that's white-ish, and it looks like I might have an overlay here of some kind, so I'll hit delete, there we go. I also got rid of that microphone, don't need that, so now I've got a white color. Cool, okay, so that matches. Let's go see what font I'm using here for Pretend Fantasy Podcast. I'm using Railway Heavy with a font size of 243. So let me select this and search for Railway Heavy. Did I spell that wrong? Railway Heavy. There it is. Okay, so that's kind of made it look wonky, so I will select the font here and I'll reduce this size, something like maybe like this. Okay, cool. And now I'll come up here to spacing and I'll change the line spacing so that they separate each other a bit like this. New podcast episode, maybe something like that. That looks good. Okay, that fits better, and now we're using the right font. It matches the font on the artwork. Cool. Now I probably want to make this font maybe a little lighter, a little thinner, a little less wide as well. So this is a secondary font. It's a supporting font. So I don't want it to be the same as my title font. So I'll go ahead and just kind of search through my fonts and I'll search for the word thin, and maybe I'll find a thin font. How about the word light? Thin is a little too thin. Blogger light. Yeah, I don't mind that. Sure, it doesn't really match, but that's okay. It's enough to show that there's a difference in fonts. I'll bring up the size a little bit. There we go. And this is our episode number, but it's a color I don't want. That's a weird beige color. That doesn't go with my other artwork. I don't have that color here. So I'll change that color to white. And I'll change maybe this color down here. Well, let's see. It seems like we might need a highlight color that's not present on the artwork. What would it look like if we didn't have a highlight color and I just changed this to black? That doesn't look bad. I mean, I could also delete it, I guess, if I didn't really like it. But I guess it looks okay there, black on black. This looks pretty consistent, maybe I could get some monsters on here. Let's see if I can select one of these monsters and copy it, and let's see if it'll carry over to the other tab. I hope it will. Yep, there it is. How about that? So here's a giant monster, and I'll put that monster, maybe I'll put it next to my episode number. And in fact, I'll copy these other monsters as well. Control C, and I'll delete this guy. And I'll just Control V to paste all those monsters. And then I'll resize them to fit so we have some consistency here. Just like that. Not bad. And now I have a guest. So I could change out my guest picture here, but my guest is going to be a monster. So let's do a little bit of adjustment here. I'm going to select both of these, and I'm just going to kind of drag them down a little. Spacing looks better to me. I've got my monsters up here. This is actually terrible podcast artwork for the episode, but this is just a demo. And I'm going to search for a little monster drawing, I guess. Sketch. Monster sketch. Oh, I have to look at elements. Don't really see any monsters here that would fit for this. This guy? Maybe I can drag and drop him into here. Who knows? Let's see. I should be able to pretty easily replace that image. But that doesn't seem to want to happen. So maybe it's photos, and it has to come from photos instead of elements. Yeah, that's what it is. So let's say I have a picture of my guest, and we'll pretend the guest is a monster. So I'll go to upload. Here, I'm a monster. I've uploaded this image from my computer, and I could just, I'm actually going to undo that. I could drag and drop this over here, drop it right there. It automatically replaces the image that's in there. I'll go ahead and select this, and to kind of match the tone of the rest of the artwork, I'm going to select Edit Image, I think, and I'm going to change this to, I think I can do black and white here in some of these effects. Let's see. Brightness, contrast, saturation. I think if I take down saturation, I should get black and white. There you go. Great. And now I've got my little monsters up here. Oh, that's a little busy. Let's delete 2 of those monsters. I kind of like that one on the end the best. Maybe I make this monster bigger, and I put it here. Maybe I put it a little bit off to the side for some effect, just like this. And then I'll come over here, and I'll select transparency, and I'll go ahead and make it less transparent, just so we have like a little shadow of him in the background. Oh yeah, that actually looks way better. I like that a lot. So there we go. I've created this template. So now what do I do with it? This is for episode 9. Let's change it because it's actually for episode 01. And I should probably change that font to match this font, Blogger Light. So let's do that. Blogger Light. And now we've got that episode font there. In fact, that might be thin enough to actually fit the word episode, but we could expand that like that. And then we could get away with, if we get up to episode 101, we could say that. Now it'll fit there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And this is pretty good. Okay, so this is what the artwork will be all the time. Let's go ahead and go up to File. And we want to save it to a folder. Save to folder. And we'll create a new folder. We'll call the folder Podcast Artwork, or Episode Artwork, Podcast Episode Artwork. Add to new folder. And now when we come back to our home page, in Canva, we should now be able to see projects and folders and podcast episode artwork. So now every time I want to create this artwork, I can come in here and say, hit these dots, make a copy. Here's the copy. Open the copy, change the episode number, 102, change the title to interview, widen that out a little bit. We can always make an adjustment to them as we're making them. Interview with a pretend with a pretender. And then maybe we could just adjust the font a little bit because, it doesn't look as good with a long title. So we could select the whole thing. We'll just say monster, I guess, to make it fit. And we'll notice it bleeds into me a little bit, so I could just, move it up a little. I'll select this and hold shift and then select that and then drag it up. And now it looks pretty normal. There we go. Interview with a monster. So then I'll just go ahead and file, save it, save. And now if I go back home and I go back into projects, folders, podcast episode artwork, I don't think the thumbnail hadn't updated yet, but there it is. So maybe if I went back one page and I refreshed it, I might actually see that it has updated. So it might take some time for the thumbnail to update, but you could always change the name of it. So I'll close this. We'll open this again, and we'll change the name up here to episode 102. File. Save. Of course, it does have an auto save. It saves every few seconds. And then if I were to come over here and refresh, I should see a different title there. We'll say episode 102. Even though the thumbnail hasn't updated, it's still been changed. It might take maybe an hour or a minute or something for it to actually update. But there you go. All we would have to do is we would have to jump in, change the picture, change the title, change the episode number, and bam, we're done. And when we're done, we go to share, download, and we download a PNG or a JPEG of this image, and then we've got it. Now, in the case of podcast artwork, we actually want this to be 3,000 by 3,000, at least. Well, actually, we want it to be at least 1,400 by 1,400, but we should max this out, 3,240 by 3,240. That's actually bigger than it needs to be, but we want it to be at least 3,000 by 3,000. That is the size that's preferred by podcast players. So yeah, there you go. That's how you would create a template using Canva for your podcast artwork. And now you know. So go make some templates for your podcast episode artwork. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.